This video gives a brief overview of each character in a tier list format, and I will also explain the most important decisions you need to make. Keep in mind that Wuthering Waves has some unique mechanics, and the intention of this video is to evaluate the characters based on their performance in the hardest challenges. One of the first free characters you will obtain, Chixia, is a great newbie-friendly unit that can unleash a lot of ranged attacks, and she can deal especially strong damage with her skill, which needs to be built up over time to deliver the most powerful version of it. On the flip side, she does require a decent amount of field time, and because she's a ranged user, she cannot parry enemies, although she does have good dodging built in. However, she does need to channel her skill, which leaves her vulnerable to interruption. Still, I do recommend watching this video till the end, because I will explain character roles and team building basics, and besides, these tier assignments are only initial, and it's better to understand the overall goal of the game instead of relying on these evaluations. One of the more interesting characters in the game, Yang Yang provides some strong support abilities such as her outro skill, which is when you switch out the character, and this skill will restore energy to the next character you switch to, which means they will be able to unleash their ultimate faster. On top of that, she can also group up enemies in several ways, which can be useful in multiple enemy rooms in endgame challenges such as Tower of Adversity. Still, her damage output is pretty mediocre, and she also wants to utilize her Melody's Forte Circuit ability, but it requires her to land the final basic attack combo, which can sometimes be hard to pull off against more aggressive enemies. Still, she's another free character you will obtain very early into the game, so she can be great to play with. So, Alto has a very unique playstyle, where he will place these misty gates, and if you shoot through them, the damage will be better. And in addition, if he moves through the gate, he can gain movement speed and deal special attacks. Basically, his playstyle is very peculiar, but the thing he is most known for would be the arrow damage boost he can provide with his outro skill. And since there are multiple elemental damage types in the game, he can provide damage boosting for arrow characters such as Jian. Still, it's hard to evaluate him right now due to his demanding playstyle, and there are better buffers for Jian, so it's not clear how good is Alto's potential, at least as of now. One of the few healers in the game, Baiji brings some great universal value for your account. And one of the most prominent things about her would be the outro skill, which will provide healing to the next character you switch to, and they will also gain all-type deepen damage increase. So this means any character can benefit from this, no matter what element they're from. On top of that, she can also offer team-wide healing thanks to her ultimate, and even provide additional attack buffing. Still, in places like hologram challenges, the bosses will deal a ton of damage from a single hit, so healing can be a bit lackluster here. And she also gets overshadowed by another healer, Verena, who I'll talk about in a moment. Nonetheless, she's a free support unit that's easy to take advantage of. Finally, the first 5-star I get to talk about on this list. Calcharo is an electro damage dealer who is basically considered to be the main DPS of your team. In a nutshell, he amplifies his attacks when the ultimate is casted, turning him into a beastly combo attacker, and in addition, you can also weave in his skill that performs up to 3 more attacks. So his playstyle requires some precision and knowledge of timing. What this means is that while his damage can be rewarding, you will need to be careful not to mess up his rotation or else end up with worse performance. Still, there are some great characters that can buff up his damage output, and he is a great choice to go for as your main DPS. If you're a fan of Berserkers, look no further, because Danjin got you covered. To put it simply, she will sacrifice her own health like the true old-school Berserker class to deal big damage. But that also means she will be at death's door quite often due to her low HP playstyle, although she is able to self-sustain. Still, this can become a problem against multiple enemies, since she can get hit by them randomly if you're not careful, but against a single enemy, like a hologram boss, if you can perfect her dodge counter and parrying, she's a really satisfying character to main. A ranged character that can become melee damage dealer thanks to her ultimate, Encore boasts a very unique playstyle, and surprisingly enough, it's not that super complex. Basically, you want to build up both her Forte gauge or circuit and ultimate energy, so she can start delivering some really heavy damage, quite literally, and then switch out to next character. Still, as you can tell, that means she relies on her ultimate quite a lot, and so far, a lot of theory crafters agree that she doesn't have a really good buffer unlike other premium damage dealers such as Calcharo or Jian. Moving away from the main DPS territory, we have Jin Shin. Now, she does a lot of things, from big shields she can provide for the team, to crowd control abilities that can group up enemies. She's got a lot to offer as a 5-star character. Still, her damage potential in endgame challenges starts to show its cracks, and while this is mostly based on CBT2 feedback, she is kind of stuck in multiple roles where you need something more defined outside of world exploration. But hey, this is just an early evaluation of her for the global version of the game, and things can always change. So keep an eye on my pinned comment if something new is discovered about her or other characters during global release. The first limited 5-star to be introduced with global launch, Jian is yet another main DPS that relies on his ultimate to dish out AoE damage. He is essentially the premier character to pull for in version 1.0, as he is considered to be one of the best damage dealers we have right now, and on top of that, another character Mortefi, who is a 4-star unit, can boost Jian's damage really well. All in all, if you want an easy character to play with, who can deal with most threats with no issue, at least as of version 1.0, look no further. But as always, take this tier list with a huge grain of salt because the game just launched. A lot of changes have been made compared to CBT2, and I will address this later in the video. If you love air juggling in action games, then Ling Yang is the man for this job. As someone who mained him in CBT2, I really enjoyed his playstyle, but at the same time, his air combos felt restrictive at times. And for this reason, while this video was made in anticipation for the global launch, it's hard to say if his attacks missing hitboxes on enemies have been addressed. So for now, his rating is lowered, as many others would agree. But again, this might change and I will address this in the pinned comment or a follow-up video. Nonetheless, Ling Yang offers one of the most unique playstyles in Wuthering Waves, and if you can get behind his playstyle, he can feel very rewarding to play. Mortefi is mostly known for two things. His outro skill boosts heavy damage for the next character you switch to, making him the ideal buffer for main DPS units such as Jian, and he can also deliver coordinated attacks with his ultimate when he's off-field. On top of that, while I haven't covered any of the abilities characters can gain with dupes, also known as constellations from Genshin, his duplicates can provide some big performance boosts. But that will be covered in a future video. Still, he is considered to be an important support for characters like Jian. Every gacha game needs a main character, and Rover will be the leading man or woman for Wuthering Waves. And right now, Rover has access to Spectral Element, which, like in Genshin, defines the entire kit of the main character, depending on which element they are attuned to. And one of the cooler abilities Spectral Rover can unleash is a time bubble that stops enemies inside it, but at the same time, he or she can provide some good damage and utility. On top of that, you can obtain all of the sequence nodes or constellations for Rover for free, so a great way to experience his or her full potential. Although, like with most games, main DPS units will most of the time outperform this character at some point in the game, unless some secret crack team is discovered. Offered as a free login reward, Sanhua has some cool abilities, and not just because she's a Glacial unit. For example, you will want to perfect her timing on the Forte gauge when the cursor moves towards these lit up sound waves called Frostbite area, and if you release the basic attack at the correct moment, she will perform a strong heavy attack. And in addition, she can dish out some fast burst damage with the right rotation, and can even provide basic attack boosts from her outro. However, if you mess up the timing on that Forte gauge I mentioned, her performance will be worse, so keep in mind about this if you're considering her playstyle. Taochi is quite an enigma. If you look at any pre-release tier list, most of the time she's sitting at the bottom, and it's mostly due to the fact her role is very unclear, since she's a defense scaling and split scaling unit. Still, as someone who has played her a lot in CBT2, she does provide a very comfy playstyle, but sadly very low damage output. So if you need emergency healing and defense, she can do that. Besides, I'm sure there's gonna be that one crazy player out there who will solo all the bosses with her, but if you just wanna play casually, just understand that she's a bit of an unusual case compared to other units. Finally, we get to talk about Verena, one of the most anticipated supports in the 1.0 version. And basically, she can do a lot of things. She can grant a strong all-type deepen damage boost with her outro skill, she can provide attack boosting, her kit easily allows her to utilize echo sets like Rejuvenating Glow and Bellborn with almost no downtime, and on top of that, her heals can keep the whole team alive. And if somebody does get KO'd, her passive skill can deny the death and provide a shield. Right now, she's the only one who gets to sit at the highest tiers, simply because she brings a ton of utility for anyone's account. While she was available during second closed beta test, Yinlin is going to be the next featured character after Jian, and so far, the current theory crafting suggests that she will be great to pair with Colchero since she can boost electro damage, but at the same time, she can deliver great damage by herself thanks to things like her coordinated attacks and ultimate. In CBT2, she was considered to be about as good as the other top damage dealers, but because she's not available as of now, I believe it's better to put her into the to be determined tier for now, just to keep the expectations tame and to see if Kuro Games don't make any balance changes to her. If there was ever a official equivalent character, Yuanwu might be that person. Basically, this guy can place down these thunder wedges that deal damage even when he's off field. So I can already see Oz nodding in approval. And if that's not enough, Yuanwu is also one of the very few defense scaling units. So he can be a defensive unit on your team, while also providing some sub-DPS support. But the best part, you can obtain him for free by doing a few floors on Tower of Adversity. So hey, a free body you can use for clearing this challenge afterwards. Still, his potential is kinda unknown as of now, so in a very conservative style, his placement is not final. Now, I want you to keep in mind that all of these placements are not final, and again, I really advise you to take these ratings with a huge grain of salt, because we are only starting to play this game globally, and things can always change as it's almost inevitable the community will discover the actual potential of these units I talked about. Also, I am well aware about the changes made to characters from CBT2, they have been taken into account, and that's why it's very important to understand what the characters actually do instead of relying on their ratings. Also, keep in mind all of these evaluations were based around Sequence Node 0 characters, or Constellation 0 in Genshin terms, except for Rover, who can reach S6 for free. And as you know it, the character's viability can heavily depend on how many dupes they have, so this will be something to consider for a future tier list. In fact, here's a quick cheat sheet for the roles each character can do, because right now, it's very clear we're lacking the variety of supports. So the only one who really can sit at the top of this tier list, at least as of now in version 1.0, is Verena. Keep in mind, you will want to build balanced teams with complementing roles. Usually it will be only one main DPS, and then either sub DPS or support to keep the team viable. And of course, when I talk about this team comp strategy, it only applies to hardest content like Tower of Adversity. On top of that, you will need 3 full teams of 3 characters to fully clear this challenge. So with a roster so small, you will definitely need to use the majority of characters if you want to do this challenge. But I will talk about this more in my best teams video that's coming out very soon, so keep an eye on that, and while you're at it, hit the subscribe button to help support my channel. But yeah, the most important thing about this tier list would be to play who you find exciting, because in reality, most of the characters are viable, and for overworld content, all of them can be easily utilized. And again, to avoid any confusion, if there are any major things I've missed or a character's power level has become much more clear after global launch, and I haven't made a new tier list video, check the pinned comment for updated details. Anyway, hope you found this video useful, and I'd appreciate it if you could hit the like button. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next Wuthering Waves video.